Hi, in this session, we are going to talk about the view models in Android. We are going to talk about view models in the Android. What do you mean by view models? So when you talk about the view models, these are nothing but what the architecture components. What are the architecture components? So if you want to build the Android project, there are some set of libraries given. When you use those things, your application becomes the robust. And view model is one of that library which makes your Android project easy, or a lot of things when you use the view model gets easier. What are those things? We will see. We will start with the definition. Sorry, we will start with what? This definition. So we have seen exactly what do you mean by the state management in Android, right? So there are scenarios. So this is my activity A and activity B. I have activity A and activity B. Now this A activity and the B activity both want to share some data. There are multiple ways of doing this thing, right? So there are some techniques. We have seen that techniques. How do we do? By means of the intents, right? But what if activity would be having some complex UI and some things on this activity needs to be there on the activity B? How do you do that? The UI is complex. So in this thing, Android architecture components gives you one idea of view models. View model. You need to create a view model, right? And by means of this view model, activity A and activity B can share the data. Look at this definition. I have taken this definition from the official website, developer.android.com. The view model class is a business logic or a screen level state holder. See, a business logic holder or the screen level state holder. It exposes a state to UI and encapsulates the related business logic. So whatever business logic is there on this can be written in this view model. Well, in this case, we are using this view model for sharing the data, but technically activity can have its own separate view model. This activity can have its own separate view model, and this view model can also be there just for sharing the data. That is also possible. Okay, so what is the view model? View model is nothing but what? Where you write the business logic or where you maintain the state. Well, in next topics, we are going to see something called as MVVM. At that time, view model would be getting cleared in much better way. Right now, we can understand what is a view model exactly, and we'll try to implement it. Okay. Now, this is the technical definition. Now, what are the benefits? What are the benefits? What are the benefits of using the view model? First benefit is, you can say, allows you to persist the UI. Allows you to persist UI state. Second benefit, provides access to business logic. Business logic. It provides access to what? Business logic. So these two are the benefits of using, what you can say, view model. Well, you can skip the view models also. We have seen that you can implement whole activity and the fragment communication, fragment transaction, activity transaction without the view model. But that's not the good idea nowadays. Okay, so when you talk about the view model benefits, first thing is the persistence. So what do you mean by persistence? So when you say when you say a view model, transaction view model, between, if you are going from one activity to the another activity, and if you want to store the data, and if you want to retrieve the data properly, view models is the correct place, or view models helps you in that thing. Then view models are having proper scope, right? So when you talk about the view model, when you create the instance of the view model, you need to pass object of activity, you need to pass object of you can say fragment, right, or the navigation entry. So view models are scoped, they are limited. So we will talk about this scope in the life cycle also. Now, handling the state. Handling the state. View models, if you use the view model, these are the primary things. You will get these benefits. Persist the UI state and provide the access to the business logic. And few points that you would be getting benefited if you use the view model: persistence, scope, and handling the state. What do you mean by persistence? The data you want to store and you want to share, that can be persisted. View model are scoped. If you create the object of if you create the object of view model that can be bound to the activity, that's the scope. If you create the object of fragment, view model can be bound to the fragment scope. Handling the state, we know that if you rotate something, if you rotate your Android phone, you lose some kind of UI state, or there are different configuration changes on which the state of the Android gets erased. So if you want to maintain that state, that is nothing but what handling the state at the runtime changes. We can use the, what you can say, view model. So view model would be helping you in these things. Okay. Now, how do you create the view models? How do you implement the view models? Let's try to do that thing. So here I have created the Android project, a simple Android project, and I have added one dependency that is important, ActiveX, which is nothing but what the extension dependency for the activity I have added. Now, for better understanding purpose, I'm writing everything in this file only, so that you will understand what's exactly happening. So here we can say my view model. So this is the Kotlin. Remember that this class can be written in separate file also, right? But I am choosing to write in the same file just for the understanding purpose. Now I'm going to extend it to the view model. If you see from the life cycle, there is one class called as view model. You'll get it over here. If you go to the class, a view model, can you see the public abstract class view model, right? Public abstract class, a view model. Now why it is abstract? There is a reason. Object of this has to be created by the lifecycle owner. That's why this class is abstract, and it has to be subclassed. So directly creating object of view model is not allowed, because this activity is having some specific state, and that specific state should be maintained by this view model child, and that's why it is the abstract class. So that is important. Now I consider that on our activity, in this activity we have let me just delete this. Let's have a button, and onto the button let's have a text view, or instead of text view let's have edit text or phone number. That is also fine. Let's add the constraints. Basically, constraint layout is a advanced relative layout. You need to have horizontal, at least one horizontal constraint and one, you can say, one horizontal constraint this, and one vertical constraint to arrange your view on the screen. One horizontal constraint, which is nothing but this, and one vertical constraint, which is either top or the bottom. Same logic applies to this. Add this to this and this to the top. Okay, because of the button is attached to the bottom of this text view, if you move this, whole and soul thing would be moving. Okay, so constraints have been added. How many constraints? One vertical, one horizontal. So this horizontal has been satisfied, this vertical have been satisfied. Something, we are just understanding the view model, not the constraints. Let's go to this thing. Now if you see, what do you mean by state? So this activity is having this text box. So we can consider the data entered inside this text box. The data entered inside this text box would be the state of this activity. Whatever data you are entering into this text box would be the state of this activity. So what we need to do, we need to create the class, something called as activity state or my state. We can create the class called as my state. Well, that can be a data class also, because we are not going to do much things in it. So here var, and here we can say phone number, ph is of type string, var ph is of type string. Now this activity is having only one state. This activity is having only one state variable. We can say this is the edit text represent the state. Edit text represent what? The state. And that's why whatever the value inside the edit text, that can be considered as a state. So only one thing is available on this activity. So we created my state. Again, this has to be written in a separate file. This has to be written in a separate file. But just to connect the things, everything in front of you, I have created these classes in one file itself. Now I need to create the state. Now there is one thing called as, if you see the life cycle and live data, your view models are the life cycle aware components, right? We have seen the scope. We have seen what? The scope. Every object of the view model is associated with the life cycle owner. That can be activity, that can be fragment, or the navigation entry. Okay, let's not talk about navigation entry right now. Let's, as we are working with the activity, we'll talk about the activity. In the next session, I will show you the example with the fragments. Over there we will see in the fragments. Okay, my view model, this thing. Now the state can be represented by the spatial class. So here we can say val UI state, state, UI state, or just make a UI st is equals to colon. Let's define a type of state flow, and is of type this my state, is of type what? My state. So we have created the variable state flow, but remember that, or technically it should be mutable state flow, right? But object oriented principle says that the actual state shouldn't be modified, or if it is modified, that should be modified within this class only. Only and only this class can modify your state. So we can make it the read-only state. So difference between the mutable state flow and the state flow is the mutability underscore UI state, UI st. Let's attach private over here. Let's attach private over here is of type mutable state flow. And here we can say my state is equals to mutable state flow, right? Mutable state flow and the initial state, initial value. Let's create the object of this my state over here, and presently there is empty. Okay, and then you can assign, remember that this is the state flow, mutable state flow. If you go to the class mutable state flow, it's an interface which is extending to the state flow, which means that I can assign this to, you can say, this reference. What is the difference between mutable state flow and state flow? This is the immutable or the read only. You cannot write the value of the state flow. Mutable means what? The value can be changed. Value can be changed. Now here we can say, so here we have a button and I just want to check the mobile number. So this is the screen we have, and if I click on the button, I just need to check mobile number is having 10 digits or not. What I want to check, this mobile number is having 10 digits or not. So how do you do that? Business logic. If you go to the definition, a view model class is a business logic or the screen level state holder. It should, what you can say, it should hold the business logic. Okay, now here we are going to click the button, and on the button click, here we can say a function we can have on CLK click, this function would be getting called. On click, this function would be getting called. And then what is going to happen? We are just going to check the state. Check the state. Now, whenever you do this thing, I didn't add the data binding in it, right? I didn't add what? The concept of data binding over here, right? So I'm not going to use the data binding, but I would be using find view by ID over here. Find view by ID. Let's assign IDs, but we can add the data binding also. I'm not going to go in that concept right now. Let's attach some ID, edt_txt phone, and here you can say button. These are the two IDs we already have. Now let's go over here and we can say find view by ID. Find view by ID. I am again saying this is a bad practice. Data binding should be in place over here. I'm not using it. I can write it, but it will take a time, unnecessary time. We can see that in some other demo. So here we can say button r.id dot a button dot set on click listener. I just want to explain you on click listener. I just want to explain you what do you mean by view model, right? So business logic, instead of writing logic over here, we have shifted a business logic over here, and that too by means of the state flow. So here what we can say, here let's create the object of view model. So here private VM is of type my private my, here we can say, okay, private val my view model is equal by, here we can say, by a delegation function. We'll talk, we already have seen what do we mean by the delegation functions in the Kotlin. So here we can say by view models. View models. So this thing is coming from the activity extension functions. So if you see here, this view models, can you see Android x.activity.view model? So one of the extension function already Android have written, we are using that just to initialize the view model. Okay, now here I can say vm dot on click. Can you see that? Vm dot on click, and to this on click I can pass the ph phone number. Here we can say string, we can pass the phone number ph. This is actually a bad idea. Again, you don't need to do this thing. The state has to be automatically bound. The state has to be bound with what you can say. The state has to be bound with your edit text. So find view by id, edit text, r dot id dot text phone dot. So here we can say set add text changed listener, and we need to have the watcher. Text watcher, object of text watcher, implement the members. So we have means we are going to assign the text. So we would be having one more function. Here we can say on ph change, and here ph is of type string, right? And here we can say underscore uist dot value dot ph is equals to this incoming ph, right? We are changing over here, and after on text changed, here you can say on text change, we need to call the function with the reference to the view model vm dot on ph change and s dot to string, right? It's a char sequence. Or you can do something like this. You can create the string object and you can pass this s, or most you need to convert it to the byte buffer. Instead of that, you can say s dot to string, more beneficial. Well, I'm saying again, this is the bad practice. You need to add a data binding over here. You need to add what? A data binding over here. We don't have data binding in place. That's why we are using a traditional activity view management. We are manually doing this thing, but concern is that you are shifting your business logic to the view model. You're shifting your business logic to the view model. Well, now on click, you can check it something like this: a UI dot value dot ph dot length. You can check if greater than or equal to 10. Greater than or equal to 10. Presently we are not doing anything. We can say log dot I at any. Well, tags can be managed more precisely by creating a tag reference over here. Presently I'm not worrying about that also right now. Presently we'll just focus on the view models, and here we can say it is correct. It is what? Correct. If you see over here, we have used the state flow. State flow comes from the flow coroutine, right? If you want to have a streamed data, we are using the flow, right? And if you want to have the state that is going to be appeared, not in a one shot but in the burst manner, you can use the flow. Here you can use the live data also. Okay, but that things or that decisions has to be taken, as per your business requirement. Presently, just for explaining the view model, I have done all these things. So whenever you talk about the view model, remember that it is the life cycle component where we write the business logic, or we can write the state. It encapsulates the UI state. It is having the UI state. So presently we have only one edit text. And if you see the button click and the UI state and the phone number and other things that are moved to the view model class. You're not doing anything over here. You're just calling particular methods. Whenever we add the data binding in it, this code also won't be there. This code also won't be there, right? And your view model knows the life cycle. That's what the scope is. When you say scope, view model, whenever you create the object of view model, you assign the life cycle owner. Okay, which has already been taken care by this call over here. Well, that's all about the view model. We'll meet in the next session with the next topic. Thank you.